This is CityCast Madison. I'm Bianca Martin, and here's what Madison's talking about. Today, the protest encampment at the intersection of Willie Street and Baldwin was forcibly removed in the early hours of Tuesday morning. For nearly 2 weeks, a memorial was erected at the intersection where Corey Ruiz was fatally shot by a Madison police officer on July 22nd. And even though the tents, flowers, candles, and signs were taken down, the community is still very much present at the site. I went down to Willie Street after the teardown, and joining me now to talk about it is executive producer Haley Sperling. Haley, thank you for being here.
Yeah. Hey, Bianca, there's a lot of news for us to unpack here today, and I'm glad to be here to do that with you. Transparently setting the scene for our listeners here, we're speaking today, Tuesday afternoon, and this is after I sent you out to Willie Street to go take some photos, go just sort of get a vibe check on what was going on down at the memorial and encampment site. And you did not come back with just photos.
No, it was not exactly what we were expecting when we, saw the news and the clear out in the morning. I don't know what we expected, but there was a lot still going on there at that intersection, despite the city clearing out the memorial. There was active police in formation in the intersection. Squad cars were surrounding the perimeter. There were dozens of protesters still very much in the space. It was loud. It was tense. And, the mayor released a video statement Tuesday morning explaining her decision to shut this down. We have a clip from that we're sharing now.
This morning, the City of Madison opened the intersection of Williamson and Baldwin Streets. The work was led by non-law enforcement staff from multiple city agencies. Our goal was to clear the barricades, preserve personal belongings and memorial materials, and open the street up to normal traffic. The CARES team and members of the Violence Prevention Unit were there from the beginning to assist. Unfortunately, as city staff cleared the area, rocks and other items were thrown at city employees, and 2 fires were set. As a result, law enforcement was called in to stabilize the scene, and a small number of individuals were arrested. Again, multiple efforts and calls to end the occupation peacefully were made, but ultimately ignored. The 50 or so unsheltered individuals who were on site were given the option to stay in hotels and were offered transportation there. A significant majority decided to do so, and around 10 people were also placed in hotel rooms yesterday. This effort was done with as much compassion as possible under less than ideal circumstances. Those with personal belongings left at the site can pick them up at Demetral Field. The decision to invoke this option was not made lightly and was only made after almost 2 weeks of trying to resolve the situation peacefully and voluntarily with the people occupying the site.
So that's the mayor and her office's characterization of events Tuesday morning. The mayor has made her stance clear since the weekend. She found it critical to reopen this intersection and close down the encampment site. She's been on the receiving end of a lot of pressure from local businesses and residents, specifically in that neighborhood, who many say support the protesters and that the encampment was costing them personally too much. The mayor's also shared concerns about safety at the site. As she said, their office had a plan for the teardown to go peaceably. Let's turn to that and how it went down. I want to bring it back to this afternoon when I went out to Willie Street and Baldwin. One of the first things that happened to me, took me by surprise, was running into a group of people calling my name, upset and shaken from the events of this morning. They were calm, but clearly things had gone wrong. One of those people were Alan Robinson, an entrepreneur, nonprofit executive, and writer whose work covers things like cannabis policy, public health, and racial equity. He's been on the show before. Alan had some insights about the morning clearing of the site.
Yeah, so I got the call early this morning at 5 a.m. One of the protesters who had been out here since day one, just like me, called me at 5 a.m. to say that the police were here. The terror in their voice will never be something I will forget, right? And when I got down here to see bulldozers, to to see a small army of an incredibly militarized police force with riot gear, batons, shotguns with rubber bullets and pepper spray. And why were they in riot gear? This was a peaceful assembly of marginalized people who haven't felt this safe, this protected, this seen in years. And as opposed to coming here, as opposed to mourning with this group of people, as opposed to serving all of her constituents, our mayor chose to attack them.
Strong words. Obviously, he got emotional in there. It's hard to even get out what he saw and experienced. The pictures and videos looked brutal. Like, what is happening in Madison? Are we a war zone? This is my own assessment. Looking at the video, it felt so in contrast to the memorial site that I visited, which had peaceful people who were mourning the death of Corey Ruiz, folks talking about Fred Rogers on the megaphone and being good to your neighbors. And then the response was such a militarized police force. That is what the images show.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it was very jarring to wake up and see, some of the first images of the day coming from the site. And, we saw on social media clips from the Journal Sentinel, the Cat Times, WPR. Everyone was out there and confirming basically what Alan said. There were police out there with helmets and face shields and protective gear, and they were detaining protesters. We know multiple people were arrested. They were kicking down candles at the memorial. There was broken glass on the ground. At least 3 people were injured in the event, according to the Cap Times, and 1 person was hospitalized. And it really, it is such a vast contrast of everything I had seen in the zone before the city came to break things up. People were getting haircuts, people were dancing, there were mental health care professionals there, there was a little free library. And, you just have to say, just plain and simple, the optics are really not great for the city here.
Mm-hmm. And seeing, people who were there trying to hold down the memorial site, like linked in arms around the George Floyd fist statue that was sitting at the middle of the memorial. And look, while we're talking about things that are not good looks for the city, transparently, the first thing I saw walking up was our Madison Independent Police Monitor, the interim, Aramid Glass, injured and surrounded by folks, her colleague, telling me that she was almost arrested and in a violent way, and looking like, oh my gosh, what is happening right now? So it's when I realized, okay, I have to record this encounter. This is what Mika said.
You just want to know what happened? Is that so I got a call. I went to the jail to check on the folks that had been arrested. There were a lot of injuries. I then got multiple calls to come out here to document and take statements of people being arrested and harmed by the police. Greg, my staff, let me know that a black man was tackled out of nowhere and put in prone position. So I immediately got here. Carmela Glenn picked me up on my way walking over here because I Uber everywhere, and got here. She told me to get out of the car because somebody was being arrested. As we pulled up, I was documenting her arrest and not taking eyes off of her. I noticed an officer being antagonistic. I had told the officers they needed a plan because I'd seen them yanking on her arm, pulling on her arm. So I was documenting everything. Then that officer who was antagonizing, I went to get his badge number. And then he said, I don't have to give it to you again. And so from there, a woman officer comes in between me and him. I'm far enough back from him while I'm documenting what happened. And she's yelling at me, you need to give him space, you need to give him, you back up, you're approaching him, that type of. And then another officer arrives out of nowhere. She pushes me, shoves me, and I just remember pushing back. And from there, they swarm me, and I'm just trying to get myself out of the crowd of officers. I feel an officer pulling at my hair. Another officer is shoving me, pushing me. I was cut by one of them. I felt they had my hand, my arm. I have scratches. I have a pretty deep cut in my hand. But this is not surprising to my staff or those who I've told, because I've told when I've arrived on scene, the officers have been pretty aggressive with me. And I knew that if they ever got their hands on me, they would get their licks in. They've been very upset about the investigations I've been releasing and the reviews that have been done. And so this was a result of that. They knew very well who I was. I think there were some that didn't. And once somebody yelled out, that was the police, this is the police monitor, because the community started to come in to try to help me. And even a little girl, like, that just breaks my heart, you know? And so people start trying to help, and somebody yells out, that's the independent police monitor. So I could tell once I kind of was able to get out that there were certain officers who had no clue who I was, but the core group that started they knew who I was. And there was one that was still saying different things to me back and forth. And so I was in the heat of the moment, and yeah.
That is Mika's account of what happened. And Madison Police Department has since released drone footage of the incident, so you can go see that situation for yourself. I have to say that this is a Madison official. Aramik Glass was on this podcast this week talking about her role in her office and describing what her job is around things like gathering information for arrests, investigating. And I walked into looking at her and a group of people, of witnesses, telling me that she was hurt by the police. A Madison official trying to do her job. And that's a lot to hear.
I mean, I'm just so taken aback by all of this. It's really hard to listen to that and really hard to hear what she's going through, like you said, as just someone on the ground literally trying to do their job. It is her job to seek accountability. And I'm just thinking, who's going to investigate when the police monitor needs an investigation, right? Like, we are losing the plot here. I know our city can do better and has done better in the past. And what folks really need right now is for the city to step up and listen, to pay attention, and to hear what these folks need. Because as Aramika said on the podcast multiple times, like, she has just been begging for people to listen to her.
Yeah. And, folks listening right now to this show, if you stick around, you'll hear my conversation with Alder Davey Mayer, which is coming up next. But one of the things he talks about for solutions is talking about how the city can support the monitor. And in addition to him, that's been a call. That is an increasingly apparent priority for the Common Council and public officials who are looking at this moment. They're like, let's talk about police cams and let's talk about this bolstering the independent monitor. And right now in our city, that's calling for a priority there. Our monitor is getting injured.
Yeah, I think also too, there's just one thing that I really want to say explicitly here is that there's just so much nuance to this conversation. When I talk about the city, I'm not trying to lay blame on one person in particular or one entity in particular. Like, there are many different views on the council. A lot of folks are stepping up and listening to the community, getting out there and talking to their constituents. And, there was a planned city council meeting for Tuesday night that was taking place virtually. And now the public's attention has been drawn into a different direction.
Yeah, so another person that was at the side of Mika Glass in disbelief of this situation and what they were seeing happening today was Common Council member Carmela Glenn, who is a trained violence prevention expert. She's been very active working on the ground at the site and working across functions to be present for this moment. And she was really in it. She was really in it. And this is what she had to say about the choice to shut down this site on Tuesday, the same day as the city council meeting that was planned.
All of these people are registered because our council decided to go virtual and not allow people to come up to the city county building. We did a ground game to get people registered and offered to be able to have community and food at the Social Justice Center tonight. And so we were going to have overfill and be able to use the memorial to be able to have it. All of these people are registered to talk. And so they're not going anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere. I just don't know. Like, do people not know how to people that are in government? Because this isn't smart peopling.
So shutting this down was not the move, is what you're saying.
And not right now. And I mean, that's why the churches have all come out. There was a promise of waiting till tomorrow that we were going to have a conversation today that with the leadership of all the churches. And the fact that they did this tonight, knowing that we don't get to do that, we're doing virtual, knowing because they've shared that I'm having it at the Social Justice Center, and you do this today, it's just mind-boggling. I'm at the point where I think everybody's either evil or dumb.
Those are some strong words from our city council vice president. So this is a leader in the city government. This is a leader in our city. And she is out there expressing her frustration. And I'm really glad that you got to talk to Carmela Bianca, because I think her perspective is really critical here.
Again, like, we didn't even have this segment planned. This is us recording in the afternoon. I went to the site and ran into officials that were like, they're in disbelief of what's happening. And so we felt that it was critical to share some of those insights and perspectives here, share some of the mayor's point of view about what happened today. What is clear, there's no two ways about it. The situation of leadership, there's a breakdown on how to address this situation in a strong way. There are a lot of hurt feelings. There's a lot of heat and tensions right now, and continued questions about police use of force and safety in Madison and how to have dialogue around this. We're going to turn now to my conversation with Davey Mayer from earlier today on the situation surrounding the aftermath of this shooting. And, I hope everyone is taking care, and you stick around for the second part. We're going to continue this conversation. All right, joining me now is the alder who represents the district where the memorial and encampment was located, Davey Mayer. Davey, welcome to CityCast Madison.
Thank you for having me, Bianca.
Yeah, it means a lot. I know it's been a tough 2 weeks, and you've been at the epicenter of this conflict. Before we dive into the conversation, how are you doing as a person?
I'm very tired, but I've been out with people since the day that Corey Ruiz was killed. I've been down to the site and just trying to be present for residents and businesses and organizers alike.
You helped coordinate with the city to get salt trucks there versus police cars to barricade the intersection. You've been assessing needs. Can you just describe and give us context for folks who don't know, like, what has your engagement been like with the site in terms of interacting with the immediate neighborhood, businesses, organizers, and also with the city government for services? I know that you've been pulled in, I imagine, many directions.
I felt that my role in this was to be there as a conduit and to listen and to get people immediate resources that they needed. So the initial concern when people started first setting up a presence there was for their safety. And yeah, like you said, normally police cars would be used to block off a protest. Clearly that wasn't the solution at that time. So the city opted for salt trucks and later a garbage truck to at least provide protection from anybody driving through either unintentionally or maliciously.
Well, it's pretty emotional for a lot of folks. And you said that you're tired. Davey, I saw you at the memorial site sitting there early on. I came back another day and sat down myself personally at the scene just to have a quiet moment and observe what was happening. Spent time with the pictures there and the candles and flowers. And I know there's been a lot of humanity going down at that site. I haven't been there the whole time, but it was a memorial in part, and it's been a place for reflection, community, mutual aid. We've made the call out to our audience to call in and leave us voicemails. I asked folks on Instagram to call in. Here are 2 messages that we got. Let's listen to the first.
I just wanted to share my experience with coping with this and just how it's been an on and off situation with trying to work and do my normal routine, but it's not normal. And I keep thinking to myself how dystopian the reality that we're living in is right now. I'm really thankful that there are folks who can stand ground at Corey Ruiz's memorial, and to help cope, my friends and I decided to go down to the memorial and encampment and bring some supplies and do what we can and recognize that our community is hurting. And it's just been like, again, dystopian is the only word I can describe it.
I can echo that one. We do have another voicemail that we want to get to here. Another one of you called in who lives and works from home in the area as well. Let's hear that.
I live inside the blockaded zone. I work from home where I used to. I teach lessons, so people have to come to me for me to make money, and they haven't been. My fiance also lives and works inside the zone, and he saw the direct aftermath of the shooting. So we're just dealing with PTSD in the house, intravenous drug users, human waste on our property, noises at all hours. We want healing. We want positive change, but this is killing our neighborhood, our income, our mental health. And it's not us versus them. I am not against the protesters. I just need to get my equilibrium back because the person I love most in the world watched a man's brains come out of his skull on a Wednesday.
I know that was a very heavy thing to hear. And with these messages, we can hear the exasperation in the voices from both people. I honestly, Davey, I can hear it in your voice. And I just my heart is out to everyone who's literally been working on this issue on the ground, everyone in the neighborhood. It's a heavy moment, and this is a nuanced situation that doesn't have easy answers, and there's a lot of processing, and that's just some of the voicemails that we've received on the issue. Davey, do you have any reactions to what you've heard about those messages, just from your own lived experience in this space?
Yeah, I mean, from the day of, on that Wednesday, I personally know 2 people who witnessed what happened firsthand. I know there were many others you could hear in some of the recordings, just people shouting and reacting to what they saw. It was a startling thing to happen in the middle of the day. And I know that, speaking with them after, it was a trauma that they have to deal with what they witnessed. I personally, maybe it's not healthy, but I pushed my feelings way down so that I could be present for other people and not really think about the moment, but just be there for other people. I felt that was what I needed to do. And I know as days go on, it's been really difficult for people to reconcile, people who live in the area and work in the area, to reconcile what they saw with what they need for their daily life. So I received hundreds of messages that followed very similar formats of what we saw on that day to Corey Ruiz. What happened to him was absolutely horrible. We want justice. We want transparency. We want accountability. Please reopen the street. That's this format that came time and time again. So I think, people were not immune to what happened there, but people had different, feelings of what they thought should happen.
There's so much to the situation. Do you personally think that tearing down the space was necessary? Like, you have reviewed, like you said, over 100 messages. You're hearing from businesses. Where do you stand on this moment?
I worked for a long time to find a peaceful solution that was agreeable to most people involved, that would have allowed some sort of protest vigil to perhaps go on at another site or maintain in the area with the street open, but we could not find something. And one issue with that is that the organizers, there were just a lot of different opinions on how things should proceed from the beginning. which is very understandable, but it made it difficult to work with that group as any kind of cohesive whole. So we did get some wins, being able to get the street reopened for some move in, move outs, get garbage collected for both people on site and residents and businesses. But ultimately, we weren't able to sadly get to that peaceful resolution that I wanted. I think that waiting 2 weeks was better in a sense. If this was attempted earlier on, I think it would have been a lot different result. And I know that, that's difficult to understand for a lot of the businesses, for the employers, I want to call them that, because there were a lot of workers who couldn't work or had to go on unemployment. St. Vinny's was closed for a long time, and they're a major provider of resources to vulnerable people in our community. And that was a big victory too when we were able to get them reopened last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, we heard that in one of the voicemails about the woman who's losing business that they rely on. And yeah, this echo that many of the businesses say they support the mission of the protesters, but they were badly losing revenue. And some of this might be irreparable damage. The Williamson Marquette Business Alliance set up a GoFundMe to support local businesses and employees. Have you heard anything else from the business community about the situation? You talked about St. Vinny's. I know there's a wider impact.
Yeah, so last Wednesday we had a meeting, the Business Alliance you described, which is also known as WUMBA. They held a meeting with about 60 of their members, and it's like a 3-hour meeting. There are people from the city there, representatives from the mayor's office, listening to them about what they were facing. And a couple of them raised their hands and said they were a week or two away from having to go out of business. And so in response to that, I am introducing a resolution to tonight's meeting entitled only to look for ways that we might be able to do business grants for those affected employers in the area.
You talked about trying to come to a peaceable solution and how that was difficult because there wasn't a cohesive set of demands from protesters, folks who were out there looking for change, looking to bring awareness to changes they wanted. It was hard to know, what are the demands. I have heard from multiple informed Madisonians who are clued in. They're like, they didn't understand, what do they want? What is the hope here? And I know that WPR reported that city officials say that they're working towards a permanent memorial after the shooting of Corey Ruiz. But did you gather, what were people hoping for? If you were to try and identify 1, 2, 3 top issues, what were folks on the ground asking for from the city of Madison and trying to bring awareness to?
Early demands were things that were understandable, but that the city couldn't do. So people were calling for the arrest of the officer, and due to police union contracts and state law, the mayor can't fire any officer. Not even the police chief can just summarily fire an officer. It has to go through the police fire commission. But as time went on, I think there was a lot of education that went on how these processes work, and that ultimately comes down to the DA for full charging the prosecuting authority, and that it's not something that others were able to do. So then demands, I think, shifted a little more to about that memorial. I didn't get a good look just when I was down there today, but the intention was to preserve a corner of the street temporarily while we work on some longer term solution, and a memorial to all the victims of police violence on Williamson Street. And that's something that's really going to have to come from the community. I don't think the city should be there to facilitate it, but the city's not going to take charge. It's got to be the community that comes up with what that's going to look like. And I don't know if that's a mural, some sort of sculpture, some sort of presence at that corner.
Well, Davey, I'm just going to say this straight, and this is not directed at you. My first reaction to seeing the encampment coming down after less than 2 weeks was, is this just Madison being performative? What was the point of letting this space exist at all? And I say that as, considering the fact that this comes in contrast to Minneapolis following the police killing of George Floyd. Their memorial site for George Floyd stayed up for more than a year. And it stayed up 2 months after the guilty verdict of Derek Chauvin, and activist demands were met, and then it came down. Madison made it a weekend change, and I'm having a hard time grappling with all of the needs getting met in this situation, but it feels like we're moving on quickly.
Yeah, I mean, part of it, I don't know what the timeline is for the state investigation or the Office of the Independent Monitor. That could be weeks, it could be months. Sometimes these things move slow. They certainly move slower than we'd like them to. I knew from the first few days that no matter when this was ended or cleared, whatever word you want to use there, that some people would say it's way too early and others would say, why did you wait so long? There never was going to be a right time for that to end. I mean, it's kind of an unsatisfying answer, but that's the fact of the matter, was that not everyone was going to agree on the method or the timing, no matter what.
Well, I know this is really fresh, and we appreciate you making the time to come on the show and dig into what seems like is just the start. This conversation actually obviously has started before today. It started before July 22nd. There's conversations around safety for all residents of Madison, thinking of, Tony Robinson just a block and a half down and his life and calls for accountability there. And now there's this larger discussion happening in 2026. Some people are asking, what have we learned? Like, what's next now that the encampment is gone? Like, how does someone like you, or this happened in your district, God forbid something happens like this again, like what do we, it's a big question to ask and to put on you, but how do we move forward to address some of what feels like failures that led us to this moment?
I mean, I would question some of the police training. I know from what I saw, there were 4 officers around Corey Ruiz. Only one of them drew their gun. The other 3 did not feel that they were threatened to the point where they needed to draw their weapons. I'd like to know more about what that meant, what their reasoning was. Sometimes people want to give police the benefit of the doubt that they make split-second decisions, that they have to, but the fact is that they are trained to make those split-second decisions and make them correctly. And that did not happen in this case. We know there was a knife involved, but we don't know the extent of that officer's injuries and what it was. But I mean, you can make arguments about Corey having a knife, but he was also on the ground and he wasn't in, I don't think, an immediate threat. And, there's a lot of second guessing that's easy to do. But as far as what I saw, there was a very clear opportunity to de-escalate and back away instead of the choice that officer made. But then, we also have, it's interesting the timing that it's along when we're looking at the OIM and the PCOB and reviewing some of the changes that may be made there or looking to increase the budget. And I think, the need for police oversight is quite evident. Besides this tragic event, there's plenty of other cases that they're trying to work through and perhaps need more resources to do so. I think, the budget requests are coming out soon. I haven't seen exactly what the OIM wants, but it's something that we'll certainly evaluate to see what they need to be fully effective.
Well, it certainly feels like a moment for reflection at the very least, and grateful for that response and just trying to understand, like, what's next? What can we do to not end up in a situation quite this destructive again? Because it's been very destructive. But that's not the only message we want to be talking about here. We're a community, and banding together is very important to support each other. Madison is healing right now, but I do want to play a voicemail that we got in from a listener about moving forward.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I'm a local community member. Just thinking about different tactics and the long road that we have ahead of us. I think it's very important that we all develop a common language, a common set of goals, language that doesn't alienate or exclude certain people. Unfortunately, we all exist and live in this broken system. And we need to find a way to work with it and to work the system. And for that, we need to play tighter and harder and for the long term.
Aldermayor, before I let you go, there's a lot of heat in this situation and a lot of attention on parts of your district. Is there anything that the broader Madison community needs to know about your district that might be getting lost in this moment?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very active district. We routinely have the highest voter turnouts in elections here. We have a lot of festivals. We have a lot of businesses. I think this is a really one of the, there's many places you might claim to be the heart of Madison. This is certainly one of them. I just think it's a very welcoming area. People choose to live here, and we try to be supportive of our neighbors who are more vulnerable and don't have homes. There's a lot of services here for the homeless. And I'm very proud of that. It's sometimes frustrating not having enough resources to adequately fund them. But I think that it's something that we're working on, because it's really important to see that people who are homeless are important members of our community, that it's an investment in them to get them on their feet, to get them to stable situations. It's far better than the alternatives of warehousing people in jails, which is just a terrible waste of money. It's a terrible waste of humanity. I'll say too, it was unfortunate, the canceling of Atwood Fest, which I've been involved a lot with in the past. It's a great neighborhood festival, but those organizers, they had a hard decision, and they just decided they could not hold a party a few blocks away from what was effectively a funeral. But as this community heals, there's other festivals coming up. Africa Fest is in a week and a half in McPike Park. It's 2 days this year instead of one. And we got Orton Park Fest, Willie Street Fair. And I just love seeing people come together in all these various festivals that we have. And I'm so glad to be able to host them here in District 6.
I think it's definitely fair to say it's one of the hearts of the city. And thank you for sharing this experience. I know it's not easy to be here. So thank you for taking the time. Davey Mayer, District 6 Alder, thank you so much for joining us on CityCast Madison.
Thank you very much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Madison. I'm your host, Bianca Martin. Don't forget, you can support this show and what we're doing here on CityCast by becoming a CityCast Madison neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Madison. And if you appreciated today's show, why not share this episode with someone who cares about their neighbors, someone who shows up. All right, y'all, please help spread the word about CityCast Madison and this episode. Share it out to your family and your friends. Keep the dialogue going. And we will be back tomorrow morning with more stories from around the city. Until then, please take very good care. And thanks for listening.